Welcome to the Royal Diaries, Unlocking History. My name is Felicia.
My name is Julia. We are sisters who love books, history, and talking about them both.
We're doing a deep dive into the Royal Diaries series.
Come with us as we learn about the girls who became women that shaped history. Do we want to give background of why we're doing this a bit?
Sure. This whole thing started because when the series was first put out by Scholastic, I was in elementary school and I already had the royal kick, and anything that said royal, and I was like, ooh, I'm into this. And I like the idea, and I was already a fan of history books, like eyewitness history books. So this was sort of the next evolution in my love of history.
Okay.
So bringing it to life for me via fictitious diaries of famous royal women.
And for me, being the younger sibling, I just wanted to read whatever you were reading, but then by extension, I found myself really enjoying these books too.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little part nostalgia kick, a little bit of a book review, and then historical overview too, right?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, what are you hoping to get out of this, or what are you wanting to do with this?
I think the thing is about history is that it's always about how you frame it. There are some of the women and girls who I definitely know more about than others.
Yeah.
And for some of them where I have a better understanding of the larger context. But if you were to actually ask me meaningfully, Julia, what do you know about Nzinga? I'm like, not that much.
You're like, I know her name.
I know her name, and I somewhat remember the book.
The book.
Yeah, the book.
I think for me, it'll be fun to reread the book, see how much I remember, because it's been a good chunk of time. But to your point, also, for me, it's more taking the time to actually learn about the context that this person was living in. Because what's great about it being in the diary form is it's from that singular perspective.
Yeah, or focalizer.
Yeah. But I think, taking the time to understand what is true in the book, or what's being accurately depicted, or what bigger story is actually happening behind what we're just reading from the point of view of a preteen.
And I think also, too, it's trying to reframe or recenter certain things as well. Not just to go and make the first Queen of Spain. It's also, so how about that colonialism,
Yeah, I think definitely from a personal perspective, I like the opportunity to learn something, but I like directed learning. So
Same.
I'm looking forward to that, where we have a clear idea of this is our framework and what we're wanting to work with, but I'm going to probably enjoy the process of learning more about people and countries and places and time periods than probably in my own free time. I may not choose to do that. It'll be nice to be working outside of my historical comfort zone.
I think also too, it's about the people who are super well known. I'm looking at the Marie Antoinette episode, and it's sort of about how synthesize so much information. You go on Wikipedia, you can read about her, or people know the gesture towards Marie Antoinette.
She's not as much as an unknown figure as some of the other women.
What do you add to the larger conversation?
A new framework for it, yeah.
Yeah, or maybe not necessarily new, or maybe instead of going and focusing on her as Madame Deficit, what was her childhood like? That type of thing.
Yeah, that's the point. They've almost been turned into a storybook character, and understanding that they are a real person, and how do they actually fit into a larger narrative of potentially a whole nation, a whole country, things like that.
Exactly.
So I think that'll be interesting to find out as well. How much do you actually know? And so I'm excited to dispel some of those, I already know about that. Because that's what happens. I feel like our brains do a shortcutting thing where I know about that, so I don't need to learn more. But I think there's always opportunity to learn more, even if you think, I know everything about it.
100%.
Because you can't ever know anything about it.
Everything. Let's take a moment to step back and ask, how did we really get here?
And where do we come to these conclusions?
Exactly.
And actually poking at it. Someone becomes infamous like a Cleopatra. It's like, how did we get here? How did we come to these conclusions? What actually built that? Because it didn't come from nothing.
When you go and you crack open a history book, look at the index, you see the majority of names there are men's names. It's important to go and look at the names who are there despite all the opposition, and to really go and understand and appreciate how they got to go and be there. for better or for worse.
And I feel what's great about these books is they are books probably explicitly marketed towards young girls. They're written by women, and they're about, for the most part, and they are about young women.
There is, of course, like also too the element of fantasy that I think gets dispelled as well in these books in a really productive way.
Yeah, like the romanticized idea of being a princess.
By demystifying what it means to be a princess, both in terms of a role, but also as like a socio-political construction. That can really go and lead to some interesting avenues for personal inquiry too.
Who gets power, who decides who gets to keep power, and what does it mean when you have power, things like that.
Why did you want to do this podcast with me?
I'm always excited to take on a new project, to try something new, because it's more fun to have a conversation. What's nice is we both have a shared history. A shared history because obviously we're siblings, but I think reading these books together, sharing books is a bonding point for us.
We were literally talking about what book to go and read next.
I know. So we've been book buddies for a good chunk of our lives. And I think what's nice too is if you're going to go down an exploratory sort of memory lane rereading something, it's nice to do those robust conversation than just, well, what did you think about this? Because your experiencing of a book the first time is different from reading it the second time, is also different from having a further conversation about the history. Also, the reality is there's a good chunk of research project-y stuff, how we're going to be tackling the books.
Yep. Oh my God, the research.
And I can't imagine me trying to rope in someone else whose brain isn't already primed to do a lot of reading and research and synthesizing it to make a podcast with me. I'm sure there would be a lot of people who would be happy to chit chat about the book, but if I said, okay, but are you prepared to share with me 6 to 7 pages about further research about this topic?
6 to 7, more like 12 to 20 at points.
I'm waiting for your Marie Antoinette to come out with that one. So anyways, yeah, that was basically it. Also, sister. It's nice to have a hobby project to work on with each other.
One thing that I definitely do appreciate about you is that when I go and I say, so this is how I'm thinking of maybe approaching this person, you're very much game, which is nice and appreciated.
Well, it changes. And I think that's something too, that your subject will sometimes demand you to make a change, depending on what things are available or not.
One of the things for me is that I don't want the colonizer to be the focus of the because so much of our understanding of the history of the various peoples, it's always framed through the colonial lens, which on one hand I understand, but on the other hand it's like, no, like these were actual people.
Yeah, you want to talk about their history, not the history of the white people showing up. And it's sort of the implication that history for these people didn't start until white people showed up.
When it didn't, like they had histories, they had technology, they had robust civilizations. That to me is something that I always have in like back of my mind too.
Yeah, whose story are you telling?
Exactly.
And that's what's great about these books is it really actually forces you to consider the great people, good or bad, in history, what formed them, their childhoods, and what would have shaped their opinions about a lot of different things. And so you can see it playing out when they're an adult, where if you're just coming and meeting them as a grown-up and wondering, where did you get an idea like this? Like, why did you think this is a good idea?
Isabella, how did you become so anti-Semitic?
Yeah, but if you actually dig into the history and you understand the context in which he was living in, you're, oh, okay. So, because people don't form opinions, good or bad, in a vacuum.
One of the things that I really appreciate about this book series as an adult is that it takes children seriously. It takes young girls and young girls' lives seriously.
And their worries and their concerns seriously.
Young people and children, they have thoughts, they have minds of their own, they have serious concerns about being a person in the world, and that should be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Way that these like young women are able to go and survive too, because I think also nothing is guaranteed for any of them.
The fairy tale myth of being a princess, just because you are born to a place of privilege doesn't mean it's smooth sailing for you, or you're guaranteed a good life.
Yep.
That's always an interesting conversation. There's a lot of things to get into in this, but I'm really looking forward to further conversations like that. But don't worry, there'll be plenty of history learning. So the way that we're going to approach this is each of us is going to take a book. We're going to both read the book together, but then we're going to take turns putting the knowledge on the other person.
I mean, trying to put the knowledge on the other person, because sometimes it's you are also really up to speed. But yeah.
But I think it's fun either way.
Mm-hmm.
Dropping our first episode in the new year in January. The goal is, fingers crossed, the second week of January launching. But in between when our episodes are dropping, I don't know about you, my research process, I find a book that works and then I read through it. And if I can't read through it because it's a real slog, I try to find the appropriate mood music. So in between us dropping episodes, you can find us on Facebook. We're at Royal Diaries Pod, Tumblr, Royal Diaries Podcast, Twitter at Royal Diaries Pod. And I will be sharing here's what Felicia listened to read about Isabel of Spain being sometimes actually the worst person ever. But
actually the worst
but the
person
music is so good, and it's like traditional Al-Andalus type of music. So it's a great fun time.
Or it can also go and be, on this day, this significant thing happened for this person.
Yeah, and then on Tumblr, this is where people say, why do you want a Tumblr? Because that's where I can put in all my history memes that are related to this subject. So lots of fun additional content. Also, what books or articles we read or we found useful.
Or, after we were really planning this, I went and I rewatched the Virgin Queen miniseries with Anne-Marie Duff and Tom Hardy.
Yeah, so we'll post our fave clips, or if there's any additional content. If before listening to an Anastasia podcast, you're like, I'd like a crash course about the Russian Revolution, just watch that episode on this YouTube channel, and I'll link it to you guys.
History as a discipline should be taken serious. There are a lot of people who will work really freaking hard.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, history can be a lot of fun to learn about. Engage in history is a wonderful thing, and it doesn't matter how you do it.
Yeah, and I definitely think the idea of don't be too precious about it. Put a special box around something, then immediately they're telling you that you're not smart enough or you don't understand it, so therefore you're not allowed to be part of something.
Or
history's part of us all.
Yeah, you may not know as much as you want to today, but you're going to go and learn something today, and then you're going to know a little bit more tomorrow.
Exactly.
What a wonderful thing.
Exactly. So that's basically what we're here about with the Royal Diaries podcast. Unlocking history. Get it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. That's all.
Follow us for more research, fun facts, soundtracks, and aesthetic posts. You can find us on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter at Royal Diaries Pod.